Welcome to Gardening with William DeMille. This is our Thursday Q&A where I help you have the very best garden of your entire life. In this class, we discuss gardening and farming, the Georgic tradition, soil health, education. The purpose of this is to increase your health from the ground up. I often say the Georgic tradition, and if you have met me, you probably know what that is. But for those of you who are on YouTube listening, you probably don't know what that is. Georgic is an ancient word. It was made by the Roman poet Virgil, and it has origins in Greek and Latin. Geo meaning earth, oric meaning work, so those who work the earth or those who farm, and that is what the tradition is about. There's two parts to the Georgic tradition. One part of the Georgic tradition is the beautiful idea of the literary writings that people wrote down. And it actually started 700 years before Virgil in the Greek Empire with a guy named Hesiod. And you can read Hesiod's Works and Days is the title of his book. And he talks about how if people work enough, it conquers all. So that's a fun quote. There's another great quote by Hesiod, and it is, "Build barns, it won't be summer forever." So I love those two. And then Virgil comes along, and the guy in charge of Rome at the time, whoever he was the emperor or whatever, he hired Virgil to write romantic stories about the entire Georgic tradition, the whole thing that in the good old days, life was better and people had more freedom and people were less lazy. And that was the idea that the emperor of Rome wanted Virgil to write about. So he wrote about back in the day when farmers were farming and life was better. And it's kind of funny because we always think that it doesn't matter what generation you're in, that is the idea, that back in the good old days, life was better and life was simpler. And we know that because of history, because throughout history, you read these things that are written by people. Every century has writings like that. And so it just must be a condition of human nature. But the whole idea of the Georgic tradition is that we work the land. It provides for the basics of life: food, clothing, water, and shelter. And then upon that, we build a society that has higher culture, music, art, museums, whatever, an orchestra. And so all the higher thinking and the higher learning are built upon the bases, the basics, the baseness. And sometimes we think of baseness as a derogatory, but as far as the Georgic tradition goes, we're simply talking about the production of food, water, clothing, shelter. So that is what it means when I say Georgic and the Georgic tradition. But that's one part, the literary part. The other part of the Georgic tradition is the work ethic tradition of people who are out there. They are on the land. They are fighting against Mother Nature and what Mother Nature wants to do and accomplish. They fight against that natural system to bring forth food, clothing, water for the people. So there's the writing about it, and that is a tradition. It's a literary tradition. And then there's the tradition, generally passed down from grandfather to father to son. It's been, we see that as fathers teach their kids how to go hunting, how to provide, how to trap, how to do wilderness survival skills is what we would call them today, and obviously agriculture. So there's all these different aspects of dealing with Mother Nature. And it's interesting because the Georgic tradition has always looked at this whole thing as a fight. But when you get into the literature has an opposite tradition, and it's called the pastoral tradition. And so there's the pastoralists who write, and they have it's a swing of the pendulum in the complete opposite direction. And they talk about the entire world being a beautiful place. Nature is loving and kind and beautiful and glorious. And it's a place for people to have picnics, a place for love, a place for relaxation, and a place for recreation. And that's more of the pastoral tradition. And both of these traditions go back, I mean, every generation writes about this stuff. You just have to find the authors who are writing about it. And it goes back for thousands of years. So in the literary tradition, you have those two different opposing views, that nature is against us or nature is our friend and it is for us. And we have a lot to learn from both of those, because they're both right and they're both wrong. Nature is not always kind. Natural disasters can be very unkind. And nature is not always something to be fought against. In fact, what we have learned in, throughout the ages, but especially in recent decades, when now that we have an information, this is the world of information right now, the information age. It's easy to understand and to get the information we need. It's right at our fingertips. And so it's super easy to see that when we work with Mother Nature, we are much more productive in our agriculture. And that's the thing that I get excited about. So I love the Georgic tradition, but not the negative side. I love the pastoral tradition, but not the negative side. Both of these literary traditions have gone to extremes. And here again, the Georgic tradition, the part of it that is the work ethic that is passed on from one generation to the next, of working the land and doing all the outdoor work to create food, water, shelter, clothing, fiber, timber, all that stuff. It's fascinating and incredible, because they all have a positive and a negative side, and we need to be diligent when we look at this and not buy into the negatives. If it's not helping our human family, it's a negative. Just because it was some really fantastic thing with the Georgic tradition doesn't mean it's great. Although I always say, oh, how great the Georgic tradition is. Well, that's because I'm talking about the positive side of it. So these are just interesting thoughts to think about. And I always say the Georgic tradition, and several people have never even heard of the word Georgic. Like, what is that? What does that even mean? Because it is an obsolete word in our world today. The Oxford English Dictionary has the word Georgic in it because it's been talked about forever. And there's been some recent publications in the last decade or so. And so the word is starting to come back in some of the publications. People have started to talk about Georgic again, which is fantastic because it's an important part of our world and our heritage. And it has a lot of fantastic, awesome lessons. And part of Georgics is the whole idea of mission. And when you read the Georgic tradition, you start to see and understand that the people who were writing this from ancient times till now, they always had a partnership with God or the gods, depending on how far back you go. In Greek and Roman times, it was partnership with the gods. Of course, Roman and Greek gods is what they would write about. But it was just interesting to see how the people would work, because when they had that relationship of, it was kind of a triangle relationship, a human being, the land or the earth, and the gods or a god, a deity of some type. So there's the triangle. When that triangle was intact and the person would work the earth to bring forth food, if they would work hard like it mattered to them to make it work, to make it a success, and then they prayed and interacted with God the way that, as if it mattered, like if it was God's fault if it didn't work. So it depended upon God. And the more ancient writings you read, the weirder they get, because it's not normal to us. But it's just fascinating because it stays the same throughout time. You find this in the history of Switzerland, the Anglo-Saxon tradition. There's a book of, it's 40 centuries of agriculture in the Orient. It's fascinating. You start seeing these same things happening, these same trends. So when that relationship of a triangle between a human, the land they are working, and God, the people tended to have a free society. Now, most of those societies had slaves. So if you were a slave, it wasn't free, but to the writers, they were free. So that's an interesting argument. But we won't be getting into that today. But it's the same today. People who have something that they look to besides just the land, they have a bigger, broader perspective, and they often find pretty incredible success in their ventures that they're doing, and their neighbors often think they're weirdos, which has been true throughout the Georgic tradition. So those are just some highlights of the Georgic tradition, fun things to think about. So when a person is partnered with God, like I said, and here's the way the ancient Greeks said it. They said that the true harvest of the soil was not the food, but it was the good citizen in the community. And so that's pretty incredible thought. And that's one reason I like the Georgic tradition, because you see that very same result throughout all of the literature when you go in and you study this. And it takes years to read it all, all the Georgic books. And you probably can't read it all. There's too many, but there's some major ones that you can read in a series of years. But mission is a big part of this. People tend to think that they were born for a purpose, and God created them to do something special. And this is something that rises out of the foundation of the Georgic tradition. And then when you have a group of people who don't have that type of a belief in that foundation, and they think, people are just people, and we just do whatever. We weren't born for anything. There's very little meaning in life. And a lot of times there's cynical humans who are that way. And we find that they don't have that closeness with the land. And there's even modern researchers who are saying similar things to this. Richard Louv writes about it. He's got some great books out there, Vitamin N, and he's the one who coined nature deficit disorder. So there's a lot of modern people who are saying similar things, which is pretty interesting. So here's an opposite example of some of the stuff I'm talking about. When there's not that triangle and it's just humans and the earth growing food, what happens is the societies tend to go in a more tyrannical way, and we have societies with very top-heavy governments, top-down approaches, lots of socialism, communism type situations, when there's not the deity in the triangle. And then food production simply becomes something that is done by the state, and then there are workers who do it. And if you are a landowner, you're considered a peasant, not a good citizen. You're just considered a slave or a peasant, and that's who grows our food. And we see this trend. So there's a lot of levels to this. So this goes pretty wide because there's a lot of information, and it goes pretty deep because there's a lot of levels to all the things we can talk about when it comes to the Georgic tradition. And I just find it fascinating and wonderful, because if we want to continue in our lives to have the good things that we have seen throughout history, then we have to do the things that those people have done in history to get the result that they want. And the Georgic tradition is a big part of it. So if you interview people on the street today and ask them where food comes from, they say the grocery store. I have an acquaintance who knows, well, it's a super good friend of mine, actually. But she was at a dairy, she worked there, and the guy came in, he had a master's degree in something, so he wasn't just a fool. But he came in and he saw the milk truck at the dairy, and he said, how come they're bringing a milk truck here? Are they feeding all that milk to the cows? And these are just the funny, weird things that we don't understand because we're so removed from the land. So there's certainly a tie of being close to the land and the freedoms that we enjoy in this world, which is pretty great. So there's a little wee bit about the Georgic tradition, and we could go on for hours and hours, but we're not gonna. Let's open this up for gardening questions. Ask me your questions. I will answer them the best I can, and if I don't know the answer, I will say I don't know. Go ahead and unmute and ask your question, or you can type it in the chat, either one.
I have a tree that is, sorry.
Okay, John, you go first.
Okay, I have a tree that is, 15 feet away from the house. Is that too close?
What kind of tree?
It's a linden tree.
Yeah, they get pretty big. It probably is too close to the house. But
so
I wouldn't cut it down, though.
Really?
It's a sin to cut it down a tree just because it's going to wreck the foundation of a house.
Right. We should let the foundation go and save the tree. Yep.
Yeah, you may have to remove it. I don't know. I can't tell you on a chat like this. We would have to look at the tree and look at the house and look at the foundation. Okay. There's a lot of factors in that. I probably can't give you a good answer right now. 15 feet is pretty close for a very large tree. So
yeah, well, it's about 2 stories tall now, so that it's maybe 25 feet tall, and right, and I had the limbs trimmed back so that they wouldn't interfere with the roof. But I'm concerned that the roots might do some things to the foundation.
That is certainly a possibility. Yeah, you might want to get a local person there who knows about that stuff to help you out so they can actually come and look at it and see. But over time, because those trees live a long time and they can get pretty big, so it's probably not the best distance away from a foundation. Okay.
So I have and I'll let you go with your other questions, and then I'll have another one.
Okay, Ron, go ahead.
So we are headed up that way, or Idaho, tomorrow via Oregon.
Okay.
Which is usually the case anyway. But so we'll be there for a few days and still trying to source wood chips, but we'll be up there on a more regular basis here over the next couple of weeks and then for longer periods of time. So we're still in summer, but we're going to be up there nearly full time here by September. And what is it that if we wanted to do fruit trees, we're going to work on the garden as well, which is what we have to have the chips for and stuff. But we want to plant fruit trees and some other kind of trees, and even berries. Those should go in September, I mean, November, just October, November, because they have to be dormant, right?
Yeah, yeah, and the fall's usually a good time to plant those. Here's what I would do. Try to find a local mom and pop nursery that's just owned by a family business, because they usually are super good and they know what they're talking about. But
Right.
you need somebody in that area, as close to where you live as possible, who pretty much understands your condition of where you live, and then use their recommendations, because fruit trees can be a little bit tricky. So, like northern Utah, I always tell everybody to go to Cook's Nursery. But where you're up there in Idaho, you're going to have to find a more local place who knows what they're talking about. So, like if you were going to buy a fruit tree at like a store, like a Home Depot, because like they will sell trees in their garden center, but nobody there can tell you anything about it, because they're
Sure.
just random workers off the street and they don't know. But if you can find a family-owned business who's a nursery, that's fantastic, because they usually know their stuff about the local area. So that's your key for success for fruit trees.
All right, now we haven't done any soil prep yet. We haven't been up there. We're going to put out some seed here that we bought from, was it Utah Seed? And
Yeah.
we came to see you. We were there before. So we'll
Yeah.
put that out, I guess, late October, November would be about right.
When it starts raining.
It starts raining.
Yeah, or even earlier. If it just depends on the water situation, but yeah, if you can get it out in September, that's good too.
All right, so we do want to put the trees in because we want to get them started. But we haven't done any prep with the soil, so we'll get the grass in. Is it wise to put the trees in now if we start putting some compost with it and find some wood chips, and then we've got to obviously water them, and so
Yeah. So when you're planting fruit trees, you don't want to really add too much to the soil. You wouldn't want to add wood chips or compost in the potting hole where you're digging the hole and then putting the tree down in. Usually native soils are okay. The thing with trees is they will die if the water doesn't drain out of the soil. So if you have a heavy clay soil, but you guys are mostly sand, right?
yes.
Yeah.
Sandy soil, so you should be fine. But just, if you dug down a couple of feet in the soil and smell it, if it smells like a sour, anaerobic, nasty smell, then it's probably not very well drained. But you're mostly sand. I think you're going to be just fine with trees. And then around the tree on the soil surface, that's where you would put wood chips and stuff.
All right. Yeah, right now the soil smells like sand.
Yeah. Yeah, you're probably going to be fantastic. So it'll be good.
All right. Okay, well, that's what we're gonna be getting on here in the next few weeks, is get that garden started for the winter garden and stuff. So we'll see.
Yeah, nice. Sounds
Thank
good.
Yeah.
Perfect. Okay, Amber, did you have a question tonight, or are you just here for the fun of it? Because it is pretty fun.
It it is for sure. So I wish I was home and could show you some of our garden issues that we're having, but I know we've got some tomato rot, so I think we need to add calcium to that.
Okay.
Calcium fertilizer there. I'm excited for Kirsten coming home with all her knowledge and help us out. But trying to think. I think we're doing pretty good. Our flowers in the front, I don't know if you know much about just normal flowers, but like something is eating them to pieces. Like, I don't know if it's grass. I haven't seen any of the bugs, but they're just like holes everywhere. We planted like a flower bed in the front yard and it's just devoured.
Yeah, okay.
Do you have any thoughts on that? Should I just put down like some diatomaceous earth, or?
Yeah, that could help for sure. Yeah, if you have some of that, that's a good thing to do. Yeah. I'm trying to think real quick. And I don't have any brilliant thoughts about that for flowers. But in future years, if you can be getting lots of like compost extract on there 2 or 3 times a year, that builds up the beneficial microbes really good, and then usually you have less insect pressure.
Okay, cool. Yeah, because we hadn't done anything with that dirt. Like in the couple of years that we've lived here. And I don't know if it's ever really been touched for who knows how long, you know?
Yeah, right.
So yeah, it for sure needs some extra love, some extra TLC. Huh?
Yeah.
But yeah, I appreciate that. Sorry, I can't think of what my, oh, I'm trying to think. Yeah. Anyway, it's going good, but I know there's stuff we can work on for sure.
Okay, yeah.
So,
Yeah, all right. Yeah, as
Next week.
far as the tomatoes go, it is blossom end rot, right? It's the end of the tomato that's just turning black.
Yeah. Mm-hmm.
And then they're not getting very big, they're just getting partial sized, and then they start turning red with that black spot on them.
Yeah, well, and what's funny is it's not all of them with that particular plant. It's just some of them. It's like
Yeah.
some on the top. Is that
Yeah,
kind of normal?
yeah. So
I think there were a couple on the bottom too. But.
paste tomatoes are the worst for that. Romas, and there's a couple of other paste tomato varieties that are plum shaped, and they usually are more susceptible to the blossom end rot. And some of that
I
is
think that's what it
genetic,
is.
but it's certainly a calcium deficiency. So there's 3 things to think about. One is variety. You don't ever want varieties that are susceptible. And then number 2 is make sure you have plenty of calcium in the soil at transplanting time. So lots of eggshells, lots of azomite, and lots of bone meal will help.
Okay.
And then the other thing is watering. If your tomatoes are getting dry and then you're watering a lot and then they're getting dry and watering a lot, that can cause that problem. So constant watering is more friendly to keeping away the blossom end rot. So, if you water it a little bit every night, that would be better than watering a lot twice a week.
Okay.
So hopefully one of those things can help. But for next year is the main thing. Get a good fertilizer mix of azomite, bone meal, and eggshells, and probably some alfalfa meal, maybe even some kelp meal, just plain old kelp like from the ocean.
Mm-hmm.
So those are good things to have, and you just mix those up equal amounts. So like 1 cup of each of those, mix it all up, and then put a tablespoon of that in the soil underneath where you are planting your plants. And that usually keeps the blossom end rot away.
Okay, I appreciate it. Thank you so much. Was there a 5th thing that you said? So you said azomite, bone meal, eggshells, kelp meal. Was there something in between eggshells and kelp meal?
Alfalfa.
Oh, that's what it was.
Yeah.
Alfalfa, just alfalfa?
Plain old alfalfa.
All right, we got that.
Nice.
Cool. And you said 1 tablespoon of in the ground with when you plant it?
Yeah.
Okay. Thank you so much. I appreciate it.
Okay, you're welcome.
Have fun.
Okay, John, you said you had another question. Let's hear it.
I'm coming. A little slow. There we go. Hey, so that list was azomite, eggshells, alfalfa, and
Bone meal.
all right, bone meal. Okay, got that. All right. Hey, and so I've got two trees here in Maryville, Missouri, that are about 5 foot tall. And I thought that maybe I'd try to dig them up and transplant them to Utah. Bad idea?
Nope, just do it when they're dormant. So wait till the leaves fall off and then take them.
Okay.
What species are they?
Well, one is a river beach, and the other one is an osprey. Osprey, is that what it's called?
Oh yeah, one of the willows. Yeah.
Yeah.
You might want to look at the Utah invasive species list to make sure you're not importing something that's illegal. Just, you
Yeah,
know, it's just a
right,
good idea. It'll save you a $500 fine.
okay. Well, my HOA, if you can believe this or not, they consider sunflowers as weeds, and so you can't grow them in the.
That's right.
Well,
Yeah,
after all,
they're vicious. I'll tell you about sunflowers and how bad they are. They're going to grow fast, and they're going to spread lots of seeds all over. And then those are going to grow. And guess where they're growing? They're always going to grow in compacted soil that's been disturbed. And so they're going to make a massive amount of really big stems that are dead woody things that's going to be fungal food. They have a beautiful root that goes deep in the soil, and they mine minerals and bring them to the surface for all the other plants to eat. And then in the winter, when they die down and that stem is on the ground, it feeds the fungus so that it moves your succession from early succession to mid succession, which is what the HOA wants. But we can't do it the natural way because we live in a world of ecological illiteracy. And people want a quick fix now. And there's nothing wrong with a quick fix now. But the problem is there's too much bankruptcy. There's too many farmers committing suicide and a whole bunch of other horrible things because of quick fixes now, broken families and broken finances. And all we have to do is work with nature and we can solve the problems. But sometimes it takes 3 to 5 years, sometimes 10 to 15 years. Now, I'm not saying we should have species that are overtaking and causing a problem. I mean, we go out and cut hundreds of thistles every year to make sure the thistles aren't reproducing. And there's other noxious weeds that need to be controlled. So that's not what I'm saying. But what I'm saying is that you are enjoying the fruits of ecological illiteracy, and I am sorry.
okay, so I just cut them off and let the roots decay in the soil then.
Yeah, that's right. You do that with every plant for sure. Yeah, it's the right thing. I have a question though. Were you growing a sunflower and somebody told you had to cut it down?
I wasn't. Oh, it was growing on its own.
Oh, okay.
And I've probably got a dozen of them along a row.
And it's just trying to heal the soil. So, but that, yeah, you tell that to your HOA. It's not going to work out very good. Okay, good. I think we had a good evening here. Does anybody have any more questions they absolutely need answered right now? I'll take one more question.
May I ask one question really quick?
Yeah, I'll take two. Amber, go ahead.
So one of our cucumber plants, like all of the teeny tiny baby cucumbers have just shriveled up and died on one of the stalks, or not stalks, but one of the shoots. Any idea why? Or is
so how big was it? Did it start growing at all? Or was it just like half an inch long?
Oh no, the plant itself is probably 3.5 feet. And it's produced 2 cucumbers that have been good size. It's got, handful of other cucumbers that are growing, but for some reason, this one particular, like, what do you call it? Leg, I guess you'd say, of the plant, it just, all the little baby cucumbers shriveled up and died. I'm like, oh no.
Right. So how big did the cucumber get before it shriveled?
Oh, they're just teeny tiny. They're like maybe an inch.
Yeah, it sounds like they didn't get pollinated properly.
Okay.
Is what I'm guessing.
So like 5 of them are in a row or something. That's interesting. Okay.
Yeah. I mean, that's just my guess. I mean, there's other things. There could be fungal problems that are eating it and stuff like that, but probably pollination if it never even started to grow.
Okay, thank you so much. I appreciate it.
You bet. Okay, Ron, did you have a question?
No, I think you got mine. Holly, any questions?
We're good for now.
We're good for now.
Okay, fantastic. All right, we're going to close this down and we will see you next week. Same time, same place.
All right, thank you. Take care.
You bet. Good night.